In the desert in Qatar, an hour's drive outside the capital Doha, lies the Sahara Forest Project. Here, in between a big industrial complex and the endless desert, they're producing fresh water, food and energy. For a country with hardly any freshwater resources and little in the way of agriculture, that's a revolution. Norwegian Joachim Hauge founded the Sahara Forest Project. He explains how, using only sunlight and seawater, he can produce all the things that are so scarce here.
We're using seawater because it's really abundant. As you know, in these areas, freshwater is really scarce resource. So we want to take what we have enough of, like sunlight, like arid areas, like CO2 and salt water, to produce what we need more of, sustainably produced food, water and energy. So here we have a concentrated solar power facility where the sunlight is reflected in the mirrors to this tube filled with oil that gets very, very hot. And that energy is used to drive a desalination factory here to produce fresh water from the salt water.
Where's the fresh water?
Fresh water is right here. You can turn it on for you. Yeah.
Is it just like any water that would come out of the tap in Europe, or?
Yeah. This is pure fresh water. Of course, the solar industry is rapidly developing. I mean, if you see the development within the PV industry, it's going much faster than anybody predicted a couple of years ago. And I'm sure it will be the same for the CSP technologies, because it has the potential to store energy, which makes it able to deliver energy also when the sun don't shine.
These are the technologies that have the ability to touch the lives of 1 billion people, that are doubling in power and performance every 6 months, year, 18 months, 2 years. They are technologies that are enabling small teams to do extraordinary things. And they're effectively impacting every aspect of our life. So I'll give you one example. Exponential Technologies are now impacting food.
With a new combination of existing technologies, the Sahara Forest Project is producing food in the middle of the desert, with seawater and solar power. When you can produce fresh water and food in the desert, it gives rise to new possibilities to combat the food crisis.
Here we're growing cucumbers. And these are planted about 3 weeks ago, and now we're harvesting the first cucumbers.
In 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Is that normal for, or is that really fast for cucumbers?
It's quick, and we have good growers, so it's a lot of sunlight.
And how do you expect this to develop? Do you expect to have greenhouses all over the deserts in the world in 10 years or so?
Well, we're not in this to build pilots. We want to really go large scale. So we want to establish this in low-lying desert areas with a lot of sunlight stretched on freshwater resources. And in a greenhouse like this, where you use salt water to first cool the air and then humidify it, and then take some of that humidity and produce fresh water from it. And then you can grow any kind of cash crop, really. This is barley, and it's one of several crops that we are trying out in these areas.
But it's outside, it's not in a greenhouse.
Yeah, it is. So when we have used the salt water in the greenhouse, it reaches a higher concentration of salt. And then we take it outside over these hedges, the same process. So we have salt water running down these pads, and the desert wind comes through, and more water evaporates off that. So it's a bit more cool, it's a bit more humid, and a bit more shaded. And that is often enough to get even desert environments to give rise to vegetation. This is a basic trick for evaporating fresh water from seawater. It's not rocket science at all. It's a wall of cardboard with a lot of small holes in it, and up on top here is salt water dripping down. And when the hot desert air blows into this, it happens evaporation. So fresh water evaporates out of the salt water, and that is a process that demands energy, so the air becomes cooler and more humid. None of this is really revolutionary thinking. It's more in how you put technologies together, and that is the whole secret. So you want to design the technologies to work together, to harvest synergies from each technology, making them a bit more efficient in a system.
The Sahara Forest Project provides a glimpse of a possible future, with food and water in the middle of the desert. Joachim Hauge is looking beyond the dangers of the next food and water crisis.
I think it's a challenge we should take very, very seriously. But then again, I'm much more worried about apathy. That it's so many people talking about problems, and it's so few that's actually getting their creativity fueled and getting at it and trying to solve things.